While I was risking my life on the front lines, my wife was betraying me with the town's most powerful man. When I came home and uncovered the truth, I knew I couldn't let them get away with it. Dad, she goes on walks with him 2 or 3 times a week. Sometimes she doesn't come back until 2 or 3 in the morning. This morning she didn't get home until almost 7, Stacy confessed, her voice trembling with fear. I swallowed hard, trying to push down the rising bile in my throat. Do you know who this man is, Stacy? I asked, trying to keep my voice calm. I think his name is Donald, Stacy replied, straining to recall the details. Yes, that's him. I only saw him once when he came to pick up Mom. He's a tall, thin guy with short black and gray hair. If it's the same guy, then he's the mayor, she added, uncertainty coloring her tone. He drives a big, fancy car and sometimes he even picks her up in a limo. Mom used to work for his campaign. Maybe she just went to a party with him or something. But if that's true, why is she coming home so late? Dad, I'm scared. Please come home, she pleaded, desperation evident in her voice. I took a deep breath, forcing myself to stay composed. Honey, I'll see what I can do. But listen, no matter what, don't say anything to Mom, okay? I warned gently. I'll try my best. I love you, Dad, Stacy said, her voice small and vulnerable. I love you too, Stacy, I reassured her. My name is Robert Crawford. I'm 42 years old and work as a design specialist at a large electrical engineering company. After completing all the necessary paperwork, I managed to secure 30 days of urgent family leave. The flight back home was long and exhausting. Once I landed, I rented a car and drove straight to my hometown. It was Friday evening around 6:30 p.m. when I finally parked a few houses down from mine. The November night was dark, with glowing streetlights casting eerie shadows on the pavement. The windows of my house were lit up, the living room, kitchen, and the upstairs bedroom all illuminated. I caught a glimpse of my wife moving past one of the windows, seemingly getting ready to go out, completely unaware of my arrival. I pulled out my phone and dialed Stacy's number. After 3 rings she picked up, her voice hushed. Daddy? Is that you? Yeah, baby. Don't say anything, but I'm here, just half a block away, I whispered. A shaky breath escaped her, and I could hear her fighting back tears. Oh, Daddy, thank you, she whispered back. Is your mom going out tonight? I asked, my heart pounding in my chest. I think so, Stacy replied hesitantly. She's been in her room for over an hour now. I heard the shower running earlier, and now I can hear her humming. She seems really excited about tonight, so, yeah, probably. I swallowed the knot in my throat, trying to stay calm. It makes me sick, Dad. Why is she doing this to us? Stacy's voice was thick with anguish. I took a deep breath, choosing my words carefully. I don't know, Stacy. Your mom might not even fully understand it herself. Let's not jump to conclusions until we know what's really going on. There was a pause, and then Stacy's voice came back, laced with worry. What are you going to do? I hesitated, unsure of what to say. I'm not entirely sure yet, I admitted, fighting the urge to just break down and cry. At exactly 7 o'clock, a sleek black Mercedes pulled up in front of the house. A tall, well-dressed man stepped out, briefly speaking on his cell phone. Then, suddenly, the lights in the master bedroom went out. A minute later, my wife came out, carefully locking the door behind her. Why would she do that? As far as she knew, I was still thousands of miles away, dealing with sandstorms and the Taliban. I couldn't help but notice that she wasn't wearing her wedding rings. Feeling overwhelmed, I followed them to the ballroom where they were headed. Once inside, I hurried to the men's room, finding an empty stall to sit and collect my thoughts. My mind was racing, trying to piece together the painful reality of what I had just witnessed. I had always believed my marriage to Katie was solid, unbreakable, even. I never thought something like this could happen to us. While I was overseas, risking my life in Afghanistan, I never imagined that back home, everything would fall apart. I felt like the biggest fool. After gathering myself, I left the restroom and quietly made my way into the ballroom, choosing a discreet spot to observe. I made sure to capture every moment with my camera, documenting what I could without drawing attention. Once I had seen enough, I slipped out to the hallway and settled near the doors of the ballroom, keeping an eye on the elevators. Years of army training had taught me patience, and that patience was paying off now. I knew I'd be in for a long wait, but I had no choice. From where I stood, I had a clear view of the ballroom entrance and the elevator doors. Hours passed, and finally, as the event wound down, people began to trickle out. It wasn't long before my wife and the mayor appeared, deep in conversation. I could feel my heart pounding in my chest, but I stayed calm, reminding myself that I needed to see this through. I knew Katie usually returned home between 2 o'clock and 3 o'clock in the morning, sometimes as late as 7 o'clock, so I mentally prepared myself for a long night. Army discipline and patience had helped me survive countless missions, and tonight they would help me get through this ordeal too. From my spot by the window and door, I could see the room where they eventually headed, knowing I couldn't afford to miss them once they were done. But as much as I tried to focus on the task at hand, my mind kept circling back to the unbearable thought of my wife being with another man. When they finally left the room, I could see it in their faces, the look of people who just shared something intimate. I felt a burning anger rising within me, but I stayed rooted in place, too stunned to move. Of course, I could guess what had happened in there, but I couldn't help the bitter, sarcastic thought that crossed my mind. I bet he didn't have to travel halfway across the world to feel appreciated. I couldn't help but feel a surge of bitter satisfaction as I thought about the fallout. I guess ruining her marriage is just a new campaign strategy, I muttered to myself. I wonder how the voters will react when they find out the mayor had an affair with the wife of an army officer, while he was risking his life in Afghanistan. Katie's lover tried to intervene, insisting that there was no affair. But before he could make his point, Katie cut him off, telling him to leave and not make a fool of himself. I didn't stick around to hear more. I stepped into the elevator, pressing the button for the lobby, my mind spinning with a chaotic mix of anger and disbelief. When I got home, Stacy was already waiting for me, tears streaming down her cheeks. As soon as I stepped through the door, she threw herself into my arms. "Daddy, I've missed you so much. I'm so glad you're home," she sobbed, clutching me tightly. I hugged her back just as fiercely, my own emotions threatening to overwhelm me. "I missed you too, baby, more than I can put into words." She pulled back just enough to look at me, her face full of worry. "Did you find them, Dad? Mom and the mayor?" I swallowed hard, choosing my words carefully. "Yes, honey, I found them, and I'm sorry to say it, but you were right." Stacy's expression shifted from relief to sadness, her shoulders slumping. "I don't think your mom will be coming home for a while," I added quietly. "I don't care, Daddy," she whispered, her voice breaking. "She's been ignoring me ever since you left, like nothing else mattered to her but that man." Just then Katie walked in, visibly startled to see me. "Robert, when did you get back?" she stammered. I kept my tone steady, not wanting to lose control. "Earlier tonight. Stacy needed me, so I came home." Katie shot Stacy an accusing glance. "Did you call your dad and tell him to come back?" Stacy took a deep breath and faced her mother with newfound courage. "Yes, Mom. I told Dad I needed him to come home because you've been ignoring me for months. The only thing that mattered to you was your affair with Donald Connolly." "Mom, please think logically. Why would I tell Dad not to hurt Mayor Connolly? That man deserves to be hurt for what he did." Katie tried to reach for Stacy, but she pulled away. "Stacy, it's not what you think." Stacy looked at her mother, heartbreak clear in her eyes. "No, Mom. You broke the heart of the only person who would do anything for you, Dad. I hope you're proud of yourself. I hope your cheating was worth it because it cost you your family. Maybe one day you'll wake up and realize how selfish and stupid you were." Katie's face fell and she whispered, "Stacy, I love you and your dad." Stacy shook her head, bitterness in her voice. "Right, Mom. And pigs fly. If you really loved us, you would have done better. I don't even want to think about what you would have done if you hadn't gotten caught." At that moment, the phone rang, breaking the heavy silence. I composed myself and answered, "Crawford Residence." A deep, unfamiliar voice on the other end asked, "Is this Robert Crawford?" "Yes, this is Major Robert Crawford," I replied, adding my rank out of habit. "I'm Ray Swanson, a city councilman and a friend of Mayor Connolly." The man introduced himself over the phone. Curious, I decided to address the situation head-on. "Ray, I assume you're calling about the situation between my wife, the mayor, and me. Let me be clear, this isn't just some minor misunderstanding that I'm willing to overlook. There's no room for no hard feelings here. What I'm feeling is justified anger, the kind that comes when a man like Donald Connolly uses the wife of a soldier who put his life on the line for his country. No amount of money or empty apologies will make that go away." Ray remained silent for a moment, sensing the gravity of my words. "The only way this will ever feel remotely fair to me is if Connolly and my wife experience the pain they've inflicted on my daughter and me. You can go ahead and pass that message on to both of them. Let them know they better enjoy their little romance while they still can, because how this all ends will depend on the choices they make moving forward." Ray hesitated, but I didn't give him a chance to respond. It may sound self-serving, and maybe it is, but I'm not going to just stand by while my family gets torn apart. This is personal. Later that day I was talking to Foster, a colleague from my security company. He nodded as I explained the situation. You probably know our security team's been deployed to Afghanistan for the past 6 months, I began. But what you might not know is that while we were overseas, Donald Connolly, the mayor, was openly having an affair with the wife of one of our soldiers. Foster raised his eyebrows, clearly taken aback. Whose wife? He asked cautiously. I hesitated for a moment before replying. I'd rather not say right now. If it were me in that position, I wouldn't want my name dragged into it without good reason. A few days later, I met with my divorce attorney. I didn't waste time sugarcoating the situation. I need a divorce and it's not going to be amicable, I stated firmly. The attorney gave a knowing nod, her experience evident in her calm demeanor. Divorces are rarely pleasant, she admitted. But why do you think this one will be especially difficult? I took a deep breath and explained. I was deployed in Afghanistan for 6 months. During that time, the mayor of our town started an affair with my wife. Her eyes widened in shock, clearly not expecting that revelation. That's quite a situation, she said carefully. Before she could ask more questions, I raised a hand to stop her. We'll discuss the details when we meet in person on Monday, I insisted. When Monday finally came around, Katie arrived at the house a few minutes before 2. We sat at the kitchen table and I couldn't help but notice how good she looked. It stung, realizing that the affair with Connolly seemed to have put a spark back in her that I hadn't seen in a while. I forced myself to stay composed. Katie, I have to let you know that you'll be served with divorce papers soon. Her expression fell instantly, replaced by desperation. Why, Bob? I don't want this, she pleaded. I looked at her, my jaw clenched. Well, I didn't want you to have an affair with him, but here we are. Katie dropped her gaze, her voice shaky. It wasn't supposed to happen. I swear, it just started off with him helping me out with some campaign work. One night things went too far. I felt horrible afterward and made him take me home. I told him I couldn't see him anymore, that I loved my husband and couldn't believe I'd betrayed you while you were fighting overseas. She paused, wiping a tear from her cheek. Donald left me alone for a few days, but then he called, saying how much he missed me. He said he wanted to see me again, but just as a friend. My hands tightened into fists under the table. And you believe that? Katie bit her lip, struggling to find the words. I wanted to believe it. I thought I could handle being just friends with him, but deep down I knew it wasn't true. I knew he wanted more. I took a long, steady breath, trying to keep my anger in check. You knew what you were doing, Katie. You made a choice that shattered our family. I gave everything to protect you and Stacy, and while I was out there risking my life, you were here risking our marriage. You don't get to plead innocence now. Katie's shoulders shook as she cried, but I didn't move to comfort her. I was too numb, too angry. I'd already made my decision. Katie had told me that night that Donald promised he would never put her in a compromising situation again. Yet, just that weekend he had invited her to a party at one of his friends' places. I should have seen it coming. Not long after, the story broke. An online news article surfaced with the headline, "Who is the unidentified married woman seen leaving a hotel room with Mayor Connolly?" There, in the photograph, was Katie, my wife, exchanging kisses with the mayor as they left the hotel room together. The caption below the picture asked pointedly, "Does her military husband, currently serving in Afghanistan, know about this?" The article went on to detail how the mayor and Katie attended a charity event that evening, followed by a night at the hotel. It even cited hotel records that confirmed Mayor Connolly had booked a room for that night. The article also referenced rumors about their regular meetings, hinting that this wasn't just a one-time occurrence. When I read those words, it felt like the final blow, as if everything I had been fighting to hold on to had been ripped away in front of the entire world. While I was deployed, I had poured every ounce of my strength and determination into my mission. I knew I was fighting for something greater than myself, my country, my comrades, and the values we swore to protect. The harsh desert had become my battlefield, and I directed all my emotions toward the fight, using the sense of duty to shield myself from the pain of my crumbling marriage. Eventually, my tour ended and I returned home. I walked back into a life that had changed without me, and I had to face the reality of starting over. Stacy had grown so much in my absence, and together we began picking up the shattered pieces of our lives. One day, while visiting the doctor for a routine checkup, I couldn't help but worry about the lingering consequences of Katie's betrayal. My mind raced with the possibility of diseases, something I had never had to think about before. After all the tests came back negative, I felt a huge sense of relief. The weight that had been pressing down on me lifted, knowing that at least I was physically okay. I could move forward without that fear hanging over me. Returning to work, I tried to focus on rebuilding my life. But sometimes the nights were the hardest. Lying in bed, sleep eluding me, I would replay every detail in my mind, wondering how it all went so wrong. The next morning, still exhausted and seething from the night before, I went downstairs around 7. I was barely keeping my emotions in check, and I knew I had been too harsh. I found myself apologizing, admitting that I hadn't meant what I said. I was just worn out and angry. But Katie didn't seem moved by my apology. "What are you trying to do, Robert?" she asked, almost dismissively. "Are you offering me some kind of consolation prize? Are you hoping that if you let me go, everything will just be forgotten? Well, forget it. I'm not looking for your forgiveness." I couldn't believe her tone, the indifference, the lack of accountability. It felt like she was trying to make me out to be the unreasonable one, as if my anger wasn't justified. Before I could respond, she added, "Are you even planning on joining us for dinner tonight?" Her voice was casual, almost like we were discussing something trivial, not the destruction of our family. My heart sank. I realized then that Katie was in denial. Either that or she had completely detached herself from the life we used to share. I didn't know which hurt more. "I haven't decided yet," I replied curtly. Katie rolled her eyes. "Oh, come on, Robert. Can you at least stop with the childish behavior and just let me know?" I took a deep breath and tried to keep my cool. "All right, let me put it this way. If I happen to be present, I'll have dinner here. On the other hand, if I'm not here, I obviously won't be joining you for a meal. Does that clear it up for you?" She huffed in annoyance. "Fine, be that way," she muttered. "Let me know when you're done acting like a kid." I bit back a retort, forcing myself to remain calm. "Katie, maybe you should focus on some self-reflection," I replied firmly, "unless of course you're already working on that." Later that night, I knew I needed to take action to find out the truth once and for all. I had placed cameras strategically around the house, in the kitchen, bedroom, basement, and on the back porch. I had also prepared a voice recorder that I planned to discreetly place under the front seat of her car. After setting up the recording devices, I hid the base station in the attic, leaving only the power cord in plain sight to avoid suspicion. Once I tested everything to make sure it worked, I returned to the living room, where the kids were deeply absorbed in watching a movie. I tried not to arouse any suspicion with my actions. That evening, I got home around 7:30. Katie greeted me with an unusually cheerful tone. "Wow, you're home early today," she said, her face lighting up with a smile. "If you're hungry, there's some meatloaf in the fridge. I also baked your favorite apple pie," she added nonchalantly, fully aware of how much I loved it. I couldn't help but notice how she seemed to be making an effort to keep me happy. By 8:30 the kids were exhausted. I carefully carried them to their bedrooms, helping them get ready for bed. As I tucked them in, I couldn't help but overhear Katie's phone conversation. It wasn't an ordinary chat with one of her girlfriends. No, this was different. It was with a man. I froze, straining to catch every word. "Last night, I managed to solve our problem without Steve suspecting anything," Katie said, her tone smug and confident. "It was easier than I thought, all thanks to the outfits you picked out for me. He was completely charmed by my presence before we even made it to the bedroom. I was ready to let him take me that night." Her words pierced through me like a knife. My chest felt tight, my fists clenched. A wave of nausea washed over me as the reality sank in. I wanted to storm in, confront her, and scream at both of them, but I forced myself to stay calm. This wasn't the time. I leaned back against the wall, fighting the urge to barge into the room. Laughter echoed through the house as Katie continued her conversation, oblivious to my presence just a few feet away. Anger and betrayal swirled within me, but I knew I needed to gather more evidence before making my next move. One chilling thought kept replaying in my mind. What if she had exposed me to something? An illness, a disease? Anxiety gnawed at me, but I reminded myself that I had already been tested after discovering her affair with Donald, and thankfully the results were negative. Still, the fear of possible consequences lingered. The next morning, determined to make sense of the mess, I grabbed a notebook and started listing the names of the couples we regularly spent time with. I needed to piece together who might be involved or aware of what was happening. At first, it seemed unthinkable that any of them could be part of this. I kept replaying the social gatherings in my head, analyzing every interaction. One couple stood out. They had always seemed overly affectionate, even in public, acting like they were still in the honeymoon phase. Their excessive displays of affection seemed strange now that I thought about it, almost like they were compensating for something. I couldn't help but wonder if they knew more than they let on, or worse, if they were somehow involved. I jotted their names down and made a mental note to dig deeper. The feeling of betrayal still gnawed at me, but I was determined to get to the bottom of this. I couldn't just sit back and let everything unravel without knowing the full story. One way or another, I would uncover the truth. I couldn't help but feel a pang of envy whenever I saw their undeniable chemistry. Compared to them, Beth and I seemed more like an old married couple. At least she did. We'd been together for 9 years, but looking at other couples, it was hard not to notice the difference. Without much hesitation, I decided to keep Chris on my list. There was something about his relationship with Donna that didn't sit right with me. At times, they seemed distant from one another, even when they were together. It was clear they had money and they didn't shy away from flaunting it. Donna, in particular, seemed unimpressed whenever Chris boasted about his trading success, especially when he bragged about making a killing with Apple shares. As I continued to analyze our group of friends, Carl and Andy became less likely suspects. Slowly I began to focus on my good friend Dick. Later that evening, while Dick stayed behind to help clean up after the party, I decided to feel him out. "That was a great party, don't you think?" I asked casually. He grinned, cracking open another beer. "Yeah, it looked like everyone had a good time, especially Andy." Betty had to nudge him after his third drink and warn him not to overdo it. Something about Dick's relaxed demeanor made me doubt his involvement, though. As we wrapped up the cleanup, I kept running the possibilities through my mind, piecing things together like a puzzle. Then suddenly it clicked. It had to be Carl. Carl was a self-employed house painter with a flexible schedule, while his wife worked a typical office job. Beth, on the other hand, wasn't working at the time, so it would have been easy for them to meet during the day without arousing suspicion. My stomach twisted as I remembered that Carl had painted our upstairs bedroom about 6 months ago. It made too much sense now. Beth must have started the affair with him then, and in our own bed, no less. The more I thought about it, the angrier I became. I'll admit, in that moment, a dark thought crossed my mind, the idea of putting a bullet in both their heads. But I knew better than to let that kind of anger take over. Instead, I forced myself to think rationally. I needed a plan that would make them both pay without landing me in jail. I wanted them to suffer, not just once but every single time they thought about what they'd done. I wanted them to feel the same humiliation and betrayal I did. If I just divorced Beth, she'd probably walk away with everything. The house, the kids, despite being the one who cheated. That wasn't an option. Dealing with Carl, though, would be easy. I could gather evidence, send the footage to his wife, and let his own actions ruin him. His financial situation would collapse, and his reputation would be dragged through the mud. But that wouldn't be enough. I needed both of them to feel real, lasting pain. I wanted revenge. I was willing to be strategic and take my time. If I rushed into things, I'd risk losing it all. Instead, I decided to gather as much proof as I could. I needed undeniable evidence to expose their betrayal. Later, as I was gathering information around town, I met a woman who seemed to know more than she let on. She gave me a knowing look when I asked about finding what I needed. "Since you're offering an extra $50, I might be able to help you out," she said, handing me a cigarette. I hesitated. "I don't smoke. Asthma, it could kill me." She smirked. "Suit yourself. But if you're looking for dirt, I know where to start." After giving her the money, I followed her instructions. I couldn't believe I was doing this, but at this point, nothing seemed off limits. If it meant making Carl and Beth pay, I was willing to go the extra mile. I wasn't just going to take this lying down. They had humiliated me, and I wasn't about to let them get away with it. I handed the woman 2 $20 bills and a 10, my fingers trembling slightly. After a few more minutes of driving, we pulled up to a rundown, almost collapsing house. It looked more like a decrepit hut than a home. She gave me a stern look. "Give me $200 and stay put. Keep the windows closed and the doors locked." "Wait here," she ordered before stepping out. As I waited, I couldn't help but feel uneasy about the whole situation. My mind kept racing, replaying every moment that led me to this point. Later on, I was back at my place when Carl dropped by. His carefree demeanor only fueled my anger. "The room should be finished by tomorrow evening," he said nonchalantly, referring to the painting job he'd been working on. "Just need to swing by Home Depot to grab another quart of paint." I watched him down his beer, clearly oblivious to my underlying intentions. "I'll get you another one," I said, pouring more drinks for both of us. "And just so you know, this time I'll pay you in cash." I handed him 3 crisp $100 bills. "I'll give you the rest tomorrow. Spent a bit on the way home, but don't worry, I've got it covered." He didn't think much of it, just nodded and took another sip. But in my mind, I was already a few steps ahead. It didn't take long for rumors to start circulating around the neighborhood. One of the neighbors had stumbled across some online news and shared it around. Word spread quickly, especially when people learned about accusations of drug possession. I knew Carl would likely face charges for possession. He didn't have much on him, so distribution wasn't likely to stick. Still, the fact that he had the $300 cash I gave him didn't look good. Regardless, a prison sentence wasn't my primary goal. It wasn't about seeing him locked up, it was about making him suffer the way he made me suffer. My phone buzzed and I nervously picked it up. Betty's voice on the other end offered some comfort. "It's been over an hour and I'm getting worried," I admitted. "Maybe something's happened to her." Betty tried to calm me down. "I can give you a ride home, and Andy can drive around to see if she's stuck somewhere without her phone. Maybe she just lost it." When we arrived at a dimly lit house, I unlocked the door with the spare key. As I stepped inside, I noticed a bowl of salad still on the kitchen table, untouched, exactly where I remembered it being earlier. My stomach knotted with worry. Meanwhile, I couldn't shake the feeling of betrayal. I confronted Beth directly when I had the chance. "I absolutely do not use illegal substances," she insisted, her voice shaky. "You have to believe me." "You really think I'd lie to you?" I looked her square in the eyes, not buying it. "You'd better not lie to me, Beth. If you've been cheating, there will be serious consequences." I made it clear that I planned to pick up the kids from my mom's house. "Don't worry," I added coldly. "Betty's the only one who knows about your situation. And about the prison rumors, I made sure to keep that to myself." As I left, I could hear Beth start to cry, but I didn't feel pity, only a grim satisfaction that everything was beginning to fall into place. When my mom brought the kids back, I took a deep breath and told her the truth. Beth won't be staying with us anymore. Later, as I sat down to process everything, I got a call from a man who identified himself as Carl's lawyer. "Is this Robert Crawford?" he asked. "Yes," I replied, my tone firm. The lawyer continued, scribbling down notes. "Carl's wife intends to file for divorce. Have you spoken to Sue yet?" "No," I said, shaking my head. "But I suppose she's already made up her mind." It was hard to believe how quickly things had unraveled. Carl was going to lose his marriage and probably his job, while Beth would soon face the consequences of her betrayal. I wasn't sure if this would give me closure, but I couldn't deny the satisfaction of knowing that neither of them would walk away unscathed. The lawyer handed me his business card, explaining his plan. "I can ask her if she's interested. I'll offer a 20% discount, and we'll be able to handle both cases at the same time using the same evidence," he said confidently. I nodded, tucking the card into my pocket. "I'll talk to her and see what she wants to do." My next stop was Beth's parents' house. June and Hank were genuinely good people, despite the choices their daughter had made. I felt a pang of guilt for having to involve them, but they deserved to know the truth. As I pulled up to their place, Hank greeted me at the door, looking surprised. "Steve? What are you doing here? Shouldn't you be at work?" I forced a weak smile. "Can we talk for a minute, Hank? It's important." Later that evening, I went to Sue's house, Carl's wife. She was understandably confused when I showed up, but when I explained why I was there, her expression darkened. I placed a DVD in her player and pressed play. The footage showed Carl and Beth in an intimate situation. Sue's face went pale as she muttered, "Oh my God." I stopped the recording after about 30 seconds. It was clear she was just as shocked as I had been when I first saw it. Once I exposed Carl's betrayal, I sensed that things were finally starting to fall back into place. To make sure Sue had all the evidence she needed, I made a copy of the video and handed it to her. She sat in stunned silence, unable to watch more than a few minutes before switching off the TV. "That's enough," she whispered, her voice trembling. "I get it." After deciding to file for divorce from Beth, I made an effort to move on with my life. I didn't want to hear her excuses, but messages from her kept flooding both my home phone and my cell. I forced myself to listen to a few, but they were all the same. She was begging for forgiveness, insisting that Carl had seduced her and that no drugs were involved. I couldn't believe it. She acted like she had no responsibility in the whole mess, like it was something that just happened to her. I wasn't buying it. Sue, on the other hand, didn't waste time. She took swift, decisive action, kicking Carl out of the house and filing for a restraining order. He was only allowed to collect his personal belongings and work-related items before being banned from the property. As I watched the whole thing unfold, I couldn't help but feel a grim sense of justice. Carl's life was falling apart just like mine had. At least now, he'd get a taste of the misery he'd put me through. Beth kept calling, leaving voicemails filled with tearful apologies and claims that she'd made a mistake. But I was done listening to lies. I couldn't bring myself to respond. She had destroyed our family, and no amount of pleading could change that. Once I made the decision to walk away, it felt like a weight had been lifted. I wasn't consumed by anger anymore, just a sense of resolve. I didn't want revenge at the cost of my own peace of mind. It was time to rebuild one day at a time.